This title of this symposium was How to Become an Artistic Director, which I won't be speaking much to that because one becomes an artistic director by being lucky enough to get a lot of work as a director and then apply to a regional theater for the artistic directorship if it comes available, or starting one's own company and becoming an artistic director. What I will speak about, because I think it might be more interest to you, is becoming an actor and try to describe the life of an actor and a little bit of a director, because I now mostly direct plays. I still act occasionally. The first 25 years I was acting in theaters across the country, going to where the work was, auditioning all over Canada. But lately because I developed a profile in this community, I started getting a lot of work as a director in Winnipeg. So I actually moved here, settled here, had children here. Good evening. Hang on, there we go. So I am now the Associate Artistic Director of the Manitoba Theatre Centre. That's just a title. It means I work there, I direct plays there at MTC, Manitoba Theatre Centre? Yeah, big regional theatre. And I do outreach projects like this and hold the general auditions, and I have other responsibilities, but it's mostly directing plays, okay? Okay, so, and I will talk I'll try to keep it short because I'm going to bore myself if I talk much more than 20 minutes, and then open it up for any questions you might have, and that's where I'll be able to mine your interests and see if I can help clarify what you're interested in about the arts or about being the life of an actor. In 1977, 76, 77, I'm old, I met a former artistic director of the National Theatre School. My dad knew him, and I wanted to apply to the National Theatre School, which is one of the premier training schools in Canada for actors, for theatre artists, designers, directors, and actors. And this fella said, "Why do you want to be an actor?" And I said, "Well, I've really enjoyed what I've experienced at university and school and the plays that I've been." He said, that's not the answer. I said, "What's the answer?" He said, you want to be an actor, and they have to know this, because there's absolutely nothing else you can imagine doing with your life. Really? Yeah. What about something to fall back on? My parents were suggesting I get a teaching degree or something else to fall back on should this not work out. He said, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't say that, because it's tough enough, the life of an actor. There's a lot of, these are two realities. It's a great life, but I'll get to that later. However, going into it, know that many of us are unemployed for a good deal of the time in the first 5, 6 years in the business. Many of us experience countless rejections to the auditions we're sent out for. I have friends in Toronto who have agents who have been sent out to as many as 10, 15, 20 auditions a week, and may get a commercial, may get a part in a TV show for a day, may get a bit in a film, may get a play. But it's oftentimes we spend a lot of our early days in the business, early years in the business, supplementing our income by driving taxi, waiting tables, teaching. All noble things to do, but we spend a lot of time not doing that which we passionately love, which is building character, acting in plays, TV, film. That's a fact of life. Of course, that's not everybody, but it's very common, that experience. The average salary of the actor in Canada is below the poverty line. I think it's $17,000, $18,000 a year. As I say, supplemented with all the other jobs you can get that have nothing to do with acting. But that's a base reality, another reality of the early days in the business. So once you've made that decision, once I made the decision, and once one makes the decision to pursue the life of an actor or a career as an actor or a theater artist, and usually that comes from experiencing plays in high school or plays at university or classes at university. But once you made that decision, it's terribly important to get further training. And there are schools in this country, there's about 6 that I believe are premier, and then there's a second tier and then the third tier, but there's about 6 schools in this country that are great training schools for young actors. And when I say training, I'm talking about one can have all the talent in the world and be a great raconteur and a great storyteller and an entertaining person. If you can't hit the back row, what I mean by that, if you can't be heard, simply heard and understood, then what's the point? And that takes, developing the voice, freeing the natural voice is one of the workshops that are very common, or the Alexander technique. When we're babies, we naturally breathe and speak from our diaphragms down here. Ha, ha, ha. I'm just giving you an example. Ha, 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 ha. As we get older, life happens, and we get stressed, and we get worried, and we have anxiety, and our voice rises to our chest and our shoulders, and we walk around like this a lot of the time. Theater school trains us to rediscover that center we had when we were born, and relax. Laurence Olivier used to say the most common advice he'd give to a young actor is, relax your feet. And all that meant was, if you're tense or stressed or worried about what people are thinking, or what, you cannot create. Not really, because you're so into yourself. If you're relaxed enough that you're not afraid, and you're not afraid of looking like a fool, then you can actually discover in a rehearsal hall how to play a scene, how to build the character, who the character is. You can make those discoveries a lot better if you've relaxed your feet. Easier said than done. So freeing the natural voice is, I'm always struck by the great actors at MTC that I've seen over the years, and Stratford and Shaw and Citadel and Centaur, but all the big regional theaters, who can speak like I'm speaking to you now and be heard in Kenora. They're not shouting, they're not screaming. They have the technique to speak from here and speak to their fellow actors, or deliver a soliloquy to God, and almost, they can sometimes whisper. They still can be heard. And that's the kind of training that you get at the National Theatre School in Montreal, Studio 58 in Vancouver, Ryerson University in Toronto, York University in Toronto, and University of Alberta. Those are my 5 favorites. I've directed a lot of plays over the years. And so I've auditioned a lot of people that have come through town. And those are the schools that stand out to me. The University of Winnipeg is a great, and University of Manitoba are great, give you a great base, give one a great base in terms of scene study, building character, early technique, body and voice, movement and voice. But I find that usually there's more needed, especially if you're playing a main stage. My experience is mostly in theater, not as much in film and TV, which is a drag because that's where the money is. I made more in one day in a TV show, I remember this is about 15 years ago, than I did 2 weeks' salary at the theater in a play, being in a play. So that's a side issue, but that's where the money is, film and TV, if you're lucky enough to get work in that. Once you've got the training, once you've decided you want to be an actor, you've gotten 3-4 years of really intense, good training in the voice, body movement, text analysis, scene study, character building, Stanislavski. In Toronto and Vancouver, the big centers, you need an agent. So you audition for agencies. And when I'm directing a play and the notice goes on the wall at the Equity office in Toronto, Equity is the name of the association we're all members of, professional actors, that guarantee a certain wage and rights and all that. So a professional actor is arguably an equity actor. Once it goes up in the Equity office, I'm inundated with boxes of resumes and 8x10 pictures of actors that are sent by the agents. So when I was doing, for example, one of the very first professional adult shows I directed was at MTC. It was called Steel Magnolias. Do you know that movie or play? No worries. 6 women, 2 in their 20s, 2 in their 50s, 2 in their 70s. Though that's the casting of the show. I was sent manila envelopes packed with 30 to 40 resumes each for each character by each agency. So I found myself in the boardroom at MTC with resumes, pictures all over the floor, saying, okay, and the only way I could make a decision about who I'd see, because there were only 70 spaces in the auditions for auditioning in Toronto, was to look at the back of the resume. And I say, okay, Shaw, Stratford, MTC, the Citadel, okay, probably they have talent and training. Summerstock, musical theaters, farce, probably not for this show. That's the only way I could choose the 70 people that I was going to see. It was a really depressing experience. I hated it because that was the very first one. Because this is a way you choose who's going to audition. But that's where the agents come in. The agent's job is to look out for you, to send you out to auditions. Make sense what I'm saying? Send you. And then once you have the agent and you're sent out to auditions, hopefully you get a gig. And then when I say a gig, I mean a job in a play or a movie or a TV show or a commercial. And then you go to work. And that is where life becomes wonderful. Because you're doing what you want to do. Your first day of rehearsal, you're reading a play out loud with a director and stage manager and a set model and costume designs on the wall, and it's a very lively, exciting place to be where a play is built in a rehearsal hall. So that's sort of the life of the actor. Now, you can get lucky. I don't mean to say that it's all you're going to starve, be eating dog food for the rest of your life if you decide to become an actor, because many of us, I've worked with Keanu. Do you know Keanu Reeves? I'm just name dropping. Anyone know the actor Keanu Reeves, the movie star? He was, he was big, really big. About 15 years ago, he had just made his first big film was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That put him on the map. Silly film, but it was very popular in the 80s. Or late 80s. The next movie, and then he made several movies after that, and he was known. The next movie that put him over the top was a movie called Speed in 1995. You know that one? And when Speed came out, that day, the day it came out on video, it had already been in the movie houses and been very successful. The day it came out on video was the day he arrived in Winnipeg to play Hamlet. And I was in the production with him, and I was the fight captain, and I got to know him well. Well, it's beyond the beyond. This doesn't happen to many people, but his asking salary at that time, this is 15 years ago, was something like 16 million a movie, something like that, 14 to 16 million a movie. That doesn't happen often. You'll hear about it, you'll read about it in the papers about these people. That doesn't happen a lot. More. And his asking, he still gets a good fair chunk of change when he makes movies. He's not quite the star he was back then. But my friend and someone who I've directed twice, Len Cariou, I don't know if you know that name. He's a Tony Award-winning actor. In 1975, he won the Tony Award for Sweeney Todd in New York. That's the theater award for Best Actor. He works all the time. But the difference between him and Keanu is those big offers, they don't come quite like they do for Keanu. Can pick and choose more. So, for example, I said to Len when I was directing him in Our Town at MTC, this is about 9 years ago, I said, there are people in this town who feel really entitled to get jobs just because they've been here for a while. They don't really feel they should have to audition. And Len said, you tell those people, I audition. and Len is in TV series and movies with Jack Nicholson. And so, I'm just basically I'm name dropping here. But I've worked with some high-profile actors. Um, uh, oh, last thing. How do you get a job? I mentioned this earlier. Usually by auditioning. So you've got your training, you've got your agent, you've been sent, and you send out to auditions. There are two kinds of auditions. One I just held 2 weeks ago at MTC. They're called general auditions, which means you'll go to a theater. The theater opens up the audition experience for anyone in the community who wants to show the artistic director who they are, what talent they have. So as I say, 2 weeks ago, I saw about 200 people over 3 days, and they were asked to prepare, each actor, two, some of us call them party pieces, but they're audition pieces, two contrasting pieces, one comedic, one drama, or one classical, one contemporary. Classical Shakespeare, contemporary Mamet or Neil Simon. Comedic is also obviously funny or dramatic, more tragic or serious. No more than 2 minutes each, and they present their pieces. Thank you very much. And young actors it'll be suggested by their agents that they have an arsenal, 4, 5, 6 pieces that will show them off at their best. And that's the most important advice you could get in terms of what piece to choose to audition with. Don't show something that's going to showcase your weakness. It sounds obvious, I know. But you want something that you're really confident with, that really is lively and shows you in your greatest light. The other kind of audition is show-specific auditions. I'm doing one, is next Monday the 14th? Yeah, the 14th, 15th, and 16th, 3 days for a show I'm directing at the Manitoba Theatre Centre next year called A Christmas Story. Do you know the movie A Christmas Story? With the leg lamp and all that stuff, and sticking the tongue to the pole. So we're holding show-specific auditions. Now, in that case, a letter is sent to all the equity members in Winnipeg to tell them of these auditions. If you want to audition, here are the ages of the characters, here are the genders of the characters, and here's a little description of who the characters are. You can come down to MTC, read a script. You can go online and see what scenes I'll be asking to be read. And these auditions are show-specific. The actor is asked to read a scene with a reader that's been hired for these auditions. I make notes, and after seeing, usually, it can be anywhere up to 50 to 60 actors in Winnipeg, I'll have callbacks, and I'll call a group back and audition them again. Often they've sent me to Toronto to audition outside the city as well, because the big regional theatres in Canada do cast outside their communities. It's important to Stephen that we don't just lock into the Winnipeg community, as admirable and important as that is to develop local talent. For the audiences, he really wants to mine the great talent that's also in other cities. Yeah, it's a little more expensive to do it that way, but then we get some good Stratford actors, some great Shaw actors, and there are great Winnipeg actors, don't get me wrong, but we go all over the country. Other big regional theaters will as well. Okay. Like I'm directing a show in 2 weeks. I'm going out to Regina to the Globe Theatre to direct a production of a musical called The Drowsy Chaperone. And there's one person from Saskatchewan, 2 people from Winnipeg, and the rest are from Toronto, because Ruth Smiley, the artistic director, sent me to Toronto and booked all these auditions for me to see them. Okay, so those are the two kinds.